Hello all you RWBY lovers, I'm EruptionFang, and let's talk about the new book. Roman's Holiday is the latest entry in RWBY's Scholastic series line of books. Previously, they made After the Fall, which followed the perspective of Team Coffee after the fall of Beacon, and a sequel to that named Before the Dawn. But Roman's Holiday follows a new storyline from the perspective of Roman and Neo. So how was the book? How does it affect the storyline? And what's all the juicy information found within it? And most importantly, what did I think of it? Be warned, there will be spoilers from this point moving on, so if you want to read the book for yourself going in blind, then go on ahead, click away from this video, because we're going to be talking about pretty much everything. So for now, it's important to establish everything that's about to be discussed. Roman's Holiday isn't some simple side story that you can expect to go on some little fun adventure with. The entire book serves as an origin story for both Roman and Neo, how they met and became partners in crime. Roman's origin is a tale of rags to riches as he climbs his way up through the criminal ladder. He was orphaned as a child by his mother, the only person he's ever trusted, leading him to form a lone wolf mentality. Others can't be trusted, you must rely on yourself. That is, until he's picked up by Little Miss Malachite. Remember her from Mistral that we never got to explore? She's pretty much the mob queen of Mistral. She runs the show around here, so if she wants something, she'll get it. Roman became part of the Spiders gang and over time rose up its ranks until he inevitably became Little Miss's second in command. Problem was, Roman was a man of ambition. Despite having been orphaned and a lowly pickpocket in his early life, he was always aspiring for bigger and brighter horizons. Because of this, he eventually left the Spiders gang, which you don't do. The Spiders are members for life. If you want to leave, you don't, lest you dare risk the wrath of Little Miss. But Roman didn't care. Like Goldilocks searching for her perfect bed, Atlas was too cold, Vacuo was too hot, but Vale was just right. So he went off and began to start his new life of crime elsewhere. In this era, Vale's crime boss is Hei Zhang, or as he would be more popularly known, Junior's father. That's right, the name Junior had to come from somewhere. As Little Miss ran most of Mistral, Hei Zhang runs most of Vale. Roman largely tried staying out of his way and to not cause trouble for them, not really the police. But leaving a kingdom doesn't simply just stop Little Miss's hunt for leaving the gang. And so he was having to watch his back. As you'd expect, Roman's combat prowess was really up for discussion. The book paints him as someone who uses his brain more than his brawn. He calculates the risk of a situation and acts accordingly. If it's not smart to step on somebody's toes, he's gonna try his best to not step on any toes. I like this aspect of him because he comes off as a much more capable and calculated figure. Though on occasion, he does seem to be given some victories that seem a little out of his depth, such as getting the better of two fully fledged huntsmen when he decided to rob a bank. Considering a group of first years in the show were capable of kicking his ass, fully licensed huntsmen seem like a bit of a stretch. And two of them, I mind you, by himself. It was neat seeing Roman rise up through the ranks and getting more of his personality along the way. He reminded me a lot of Handsome Jack from Borderlands. Our other main character is Trivia Vanille. Vanille? A young mute girl with heterochromia born into a wealthy and prestigious family. You could see where this is going. Yes, I'm not going to drag out the not-so-dramatic reveal, as Trivia is in fact Neapolitan. In this story, Neo is not exempt from existing within Trivia's life, however. Neo winds up serving as her imaginary friend, who exhibits much of the personality traits that Trivia herself is too afraid to act out. Neo is bold, brazen, sarcastic, isn't afraid to show her emotions, and call people out on their BS, even though she can't actually call people out. She's not just an imaginary friend, as she is a figment of Trivia's semblance, which, as we know, are illusions. There goes that idea that Roman came across the helpless mute girl who had nothing to her, not even a name, so he bought her Neapolitan ice cream and that's how she got her name. Damn. During the beginning of the story, Trivia is a very young and inexperienced girl. She has a strained relationship with her parents, who often express disdain for her inability to talk and often tell her to never use her semblance. Because of this, Trivia has been forced to live a very secluded and isolated life locked in her room, like a princess trapped in a castle. Due to her family's wealth, and being slightly ashamed of her abnormalities, she was never sent to a public school. Instead, her parents hired private tutors and doctors to come to her room and treat and teach her. Because of this, Trivia became very bored with her life, and she wanted to experience the thrill and excitement of the outside world. Turns out the most exciting thing she found was being a criminal. Despite her parents willing to buy her anything she wanted, Trivia found shoplifting exciting in her mundane life. She was pretty much going through her terrible teen years, sneaking out of the house, breaking the law every now and then, disobeying the parents, and even eventually dyeing her hair. Trivia was doing it all. This sort of lifestyle led to her being locked in her room, quite literally, which she tried to break out of by melting a lock. That didn't go well, as she almost burnt down the entire house. As a punishment, Trivia was sent off to a preparatory academy for girls, where she would learn to be and act like a lady. I found this particular setting of the book quite odd, as Neo never struck me as someone who was very ladylike to begin with. In how she walks, acts, carries herself, she often comes off as more playful and childlike. Whereas I thought the setting would have been much better suited for Cinder, who is very much ladylike. Cinder walks with her back straight, is eloquent in how she speaks in the beginning. She knows how to sew dust into clothing, and could be, in general, considered very ladylike. I guess with characters as acrobatic as Neo, they typically just get placed in some sort of circus origin story. The book does mention how Neo takes gymnastics, but it doesn't delve any deeper into it other than a simple hobby. I feel like playing to her strengths and focusing on a setting that focused more on her athleticism would have been better suited for Neo instead of a preparatory academy for how to be a lady. Like I said, Neo doesn't exactly strike me as the type of person who even went to this school to begin with. Plus, when you find out who some of the other students were who went to this school, you begin to question the effectiveness of teaching these girls on how to be ladies. And that's because Melanie and Milsha Malachite are also students here. They are in fact the daughters of Little Miss Malachite and were sent to Vale by their mother. The whole plotline at the academy is kind of weird and becomes your typical high school bully drama. Melanie and Milsha are the popular girls who bully Neo because she's different. They steal her clothes and make fun of her. Very generic things you've seen 1,000 times before. Quite frankly, just the gendered opposite of what John went through at Beacon. It's not very groundbreaking, but it is interesting enough because we knew nothing about Neo's backstory anyway. So learning it for the first time, that's what makes it interesting, not really the substance of it. The story inevitably comes to a head when we learn that Melanie and Milsha were sent to Vale to find Roman Torchwick and punish him for leaving the spiders. Wanting to get the two expelled, Neo follows them where she witnesses an altercation with them and Roman. Without much reason as to why, Neo instinctively helps Roman escape the clutches of Melanie, Milsha, and all of the gang members who are trying to kill him. As weird as it may sound, I found the book really slows down once Roman and Neo become a team. In fact, the reason Roman and Neo team up in the first place is borderline boring and uninteresting. Neo is interested in Roman because he's not boring, and exciting things happen when he's committing crimes, as one could imagine. Also, he accepts her for being different, which I still don't get how that's such a big problem, having heterochromia and being mute. How does the Society of Remnant have such a problem with that? And Roman recognizes that she's different? Okay, she does save his life, which makes him feel like he needs to repay her, but what I'm referring to are the parts in the middle. Not how they met or how they ended up, but the reason the end product is even capable of happening in the first place. The reason to stay, the reason to trust, and why they're so close. They kind of just decided that the other one was alright, and then boom, they're an inseparable team that they'll risk their entire lives for. There's not many meaningful moments between the two that justify their actions. I would say probably their best moment was when they interacted for the very first time. Upon meeting, Roman just never brings up the fact that Neo doesn't talk. It's a small thing, but those types of things add up. Yeah, Neo is probably sick and tired of every single person she comes into contact with asking why she doesn't speak, good intentions or not. So to have someone just waltz up and just pay no mind to it and not care, that's probably really refreshing. But those types of moments don't happen very often. I think that was part of the reason the idea of Roman giving Neo her name, Neo, by giving her ice cream, sat so well with a lot of viewers. That's a very meaningful moment to sort of give to someone. But that didn't happen. But moments like that don't really happen. They have moments later on where they hug and Neo embraces him and she feels more at home in his arms than she ever did anywhere else. And Roman just accepts her and everything about her and how she expresses herself. But those moments kind of feel ham-fisted without any real reason for them happening in the first place. Roman doesn't really relate to Neo in her self-expression, so him standing up for her doesn't land very impactfully. It just feels like the two story began falling into place because that's how the story goes and that's how they wind up. It really is like Step Brothers, training montage immediately right after and all.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yup! Do you want to go do karate in the garage? Yup!
I'm not referring to their dynamic in and of itself, but rather the reason that they're so close to each other to begin with. There really isn't a reason that they're willing to sacrifice their life for the other. Once they do get together, the story becomes even wackier than ever before. I never got this feeling in previous chapters, but once they become a crime duo, the tone of everything really just seems to change on a dime. One of the more notable events was Roman's plan to steal Vale's entire coffee supply, or its most valuable coffee supply. So thus, there will be a coffee shortage, and everyone is going to have to come to him and pay him extra money for the coffee that he has since stolen. The whole thing was a weird tonal shift from the street rat climbing his way up the ranks and the mute girl who was never understood. It's even weirder because Roman would go on to describe this coffee heist as one of his greatest and most proud moments as a criminal. And he'd done quite a lot more impressive things in this book up until this point, if I'm being honest, other than stealing coffee. Anyway, the heist was just another one of the two's bonding moments that they go through where nothing meaningful happens between them. The whole story is really about Little Miss Malachite and the preparatory academy for girls. As it would turn out, the two are actually connected, and Little Miss is in cahoots with the academy to spy on everyone and the most important figures in Vale. Graduates are given pins which they proudly wear because it is a prestigious school, but within the pins are hidden little cameras so they can spy on them, gain access to all of the secret business insider information, and really anything that's going on, blackmail included. Don't know why you'd wear the pin if you begin, cheating on your wife or something. The headmistress of the school had actually enlisted Neo, as well as Melanie and Milsha, to track down Roman because he betrayed the spiders and they're working with the spiders. But Neo, as the story has gone on, doesn't want to turn Roman in because they've become inseparable friends. But it doesn't matter because Neo too has been wearing a pin, so they know exactly where he is and how to get to him. The whole sequence leads to a really over-the-top series of events. Roman is captured by Little Miss and her goons. Neo enlists Heijong, or at least tries to, before deceiving him and stealing one of his bullhead airships. She rescues him, but there's still a whole bunch of characters that we've just been introduced to who don't appear in episode 1. So what do you do when you've introduced a whole plethora of characters who've never appeared in the series but hold a lot of importance in this book? You gotta kill them. They kinda just have to die. Except for all the named characters that we do know. The story inevitably leads to Neo's old house with her parents, who shockingly are also involved in the criminal organization business, or at least roped into it. The moment of Roman meeting the parents is kinda weird, if I'm being honest. It really tries to hammer in the contrast that Roman is a better family for Neo than her parents, which might be true. But the scene feels slightly awkward here due to the previous failings of giving them any real reason to be so close to begin with. Considering that everyone involved in the situation is a criminal, the only thing Roman has going for him is that he doesn't care that Neo is different, which is good. And her parents do care that Neo dresses a certain way and can't talk. I still don't get that. So yeah, it pretty much just comes down to the fact that Roman is fine with the fact that she doesn't talk and dyed her hair half pink. The whole moral high ground with criminals doesn't really work. Anyway, eventually all of the opposing gang members arrive. Little Miss Malachite, Heijong, Lady Browning, the mistress of the academy, and probably a few other named characters in the book. Everyone arrives and conjoins into this house. Neo locks her dad in a room with a bunch of explosive dust. Her mom is unconscious on the couch because Roman knocked her out. And skipping over a whole bunch of action that leads to this one event, Neo tricks Little Miss Malachite into firing her airship at the explosive room with her father, exploding the house and killing everyone inside. Kinda dramatic if you ask me. But hey, you needed to do something with all of these characters who never appear. So with that, Little Miss retreats back to Mistral, and Roman can rise up as one of Vale's most prominent crime bosses. And with that, the book ends. The book doesn't end very cleanly with the show. In fact, not at all. In the slightest. There are quite a few unanswered questions, mainly in regard to relationships, not romantic-wise, and overall oddities which don't make sense. Firstly would be Neo and Roman's association to Cinder. The whole book is spent saying how Roman doesn't trust large organizations due to just how untrustworthy the members within it can be. And the whole foundation of Roman and Neo's relationship is founded on the idea that they both understand each other, and that's a rarity. So the idea that Cinder would come along and convince Roman to work with her implies that Cinder is just as important to Roman as Neo is. That just doesn't make sense. One of the biggest things this book established was that people can snitch in larger organizations, and Roman He's a man who uses his brain. He doesn't want others to snitch on him if he just works alone. There's also the issue with his relation to the Spiders gang and Little Miss Malachite. Being part of the Spiders means you're one for life, and he ran away from that life. And thus, Melanie and Milsha were sent to track him down and kill him. Despite the fact that he almost killed her with an explosion, sending her back to Mistral, and killing Vale's crime lord in the process, he ruined her creep into Vale territory, which led him the ability to be able to rise up. This does make sense on how Junior rose to power, as his father was killed and he took over everything that he was doing. But what doesn't get answered is why Melanie and Milsha begin working for Junior as well, and why the two and Junior help Roman, as seen in the beginning of the Yellow trailer. Melanie and Milsha were not friendly faces to Roman and would have happily taken off his head if given the opportunity. So how did all of that get patched up? And adding on to that, Neo goes to Little Miss Malachite to track down information on Cinder once Roman dies in the show. Spoiler? Little Miss would have similarly wanted Neo's head on a pike for being Roman's right-hand man and helping in what happened at their house. There's no way Neo's existence got under Little Miss's radar, and she doesn't know exactly who Neo is. So why she would assist her is also very weird. It is possible that they're setting up for a sequel to this book, as they did with After the Fall. It wouldn't be unlikely, and the two are some of the most popular and marketable faces that the franchise has. But how this book ended, it very clearly does not just smoothly transition into 5 months later, episode 1. Probably my favorite thing this book did is what it did for the crime organizations. We never really ever got an insight into it or the hierarchy within it. I loved what it did for Little Miss Malachite. The book really painted her as one of the biggest top dog crime bosses around that you could possibly encounter. She was the queen who ran Mistral, but she wasn't the empress who ruled over every kingdom. She commanded respect and was a real danger to anyone who crossed her. She had eyes and ears everywhere, muscle, but more importantly than all, she was dangerous herself. Despite what you may judge about her appearance, she's just, if not more dangerous than her reputation implies. Which is always good to have a character who looks like they'd be underestimated. It's kind of what you want. The show definitely didn't portray this sort of power nor influence, so building her up was a pleasant surprise. Melanie and Milsha's involvement, I don't know what I was expecting. They were written as very snobby high school popular girl types, which isn't unlike how they are in the Yellow trailer. Unfortunately, I only got really one cool takeaway from the two, and that's the fact that they're basically so emotionless that Grimm aren't a threat to them. They live in an everlasting apathy, so even the slightest hint of emotion elsewhere, the Grimm don't pay them any mind. That's pretty cool. I like that. Outside of that, I wish we got more from them, like, depth-wise. I think every character has the potential to deliver something more than just like a basic surface-level stereotype, and that includes the Malachite twins. This book also made me realize something very important that we don't get in the actual show itself, and that's the inner monologue. Hearing a character's thoughts is actually very important to understanding what they're going through and thinking, instead of having to just interpret all the time what they're doing and why they're doing it and what's running through their head. The show doesn't do that, but the book does. So getting an insight into Neo, Roman, and like every other character's inner monologue and what they're thinking right at that very moment, it's nice. And it made me realize that. I'm pretty sure the other books have that as well. And I'm certain the other books have that, but this book made me realize that. Something I did find odd in this book was the portrayal of Neo's parents. Prepare for a side tangent. Only I would go off on defending characters who probably shouldn't be defended. But too bad, because this is my perspective on when I was reading the book. Anytime Neo would speak about them, it was made out as though Neo lived like a terrible life. It was painted in a very abusive light, like she was constantly unloved, and they just hated the fact that she existed. But while reading it, and this may sound, and it does sound pretty bad, but I couldn't help but feel Neo was being a bit harsh on them, especially towards the end. Let's clarify that. Don't get me wrong, the parents aren't parents of the year, or even good parents. I wouldn't go that far even. But it always felt like they were being painted worse than they actually were, especially compared to other parents in the series and like general hardships people have to go through. Neo's were pretty tame. The weirdest thing on their end is their disdain for Neo for thinking that she just doesn't want to talk, as well as having heterochromia, which is the different colored eyes. Two things she was presumably born with. The book, I don't recall, ever goes into any detail about why Neo looking this way or being this way is such a negative thing, other than the fact that she's just not normal. Both of her parents believe that she doesn't speak by choice, which is weird. You expect such discrimination things against something like a faunus, as that's already pre-established, society has a problem with them, and it's a problem if there's a faunus or something. But not talking and having two different eye colors. Yeah, I guess you just gotta burn them at the stake, am I right? It really tries to run the distance with these two things without really explaining why they're such a problem anyway. Yeah, my daughter can't speak and has two different eye colors. Is that a societal issue? So yeah, it makes the parents look bad for such a petty thing. But outside of that, the relationship isn't anything I hadn't seen before. A parent is too busy with work or business, and thus it makes them a neglectful parent, so they try to make up for it by buying their kid a bunch of random and expensive things, hoping that that'll make it up to them. Neo's parents are always buying her stuff. They afford the best tutors to come to their house and teach her in private. They weren't physically abusive towards her and would, on occasion, express their worry about her. She often gets a lot of verbal abuse, but the times in which the book implements Neo getting verbally abused, the parents are kind of justified. In the beginning of the book, Trivia is playing with Neo, who is her imaginary friend at the time before she adopted the persona of Neo, and they break a vase. Trivia then blames Neo, her imaginary friend, for breaking the vase. So her dad yells at her and tells her to clean it up. How could he? What a terrible parent. The other time he yells at Neo is when she nearly burns down the entire house, which, as we learned, was also the room where the bomb was that was exploded. They look like they care more about the house than they do about me, is what Trivia said, or thought. One of them is standing right in front of them, and the other is actively on fire. They're a little justified in being upset that the house is burning down. To play on another trope the book does, Neo very much fits the rebellious teenager who doesn't fit the status quo. You know, the nice family who wants the white picket fence outside and to be a functioning member of society with all of their other neighbors who are just perfectly normal and just nice. But the problem comes in when you got the one troublemaker in the family who just won't let that happen. This one much more fits Neo due to her physically standing out, only instead of dressing punk rock with a shirt that says "fuck the system" and dyeing a red streak in their hair, Neo dresses very fancy and like an ice cream. But the point remains the same. Neo is the problem child who the family just can't accept because they're not normal. I've seen this plot in Even Stevens. The only difference here is that it paints the parents as the problem for not accepting the fact that their child is different. They weren't good parents, but they weren't bad people, and I think that's where the disconnect happens while I was reading the book. Her father was in over his head with debts accrued on by getting involved with the crime bosses, and he just wants to get out of it and be with a normal family. Even towards the end of the book, he was painted more as the better parent, despite having been the one who was always yelling at Neo and getting upset in the beginning of the book. Her mother, however, was the opposite. In the beginning, she was shown to be very empathetic towards her daughter, but had the inability to look at her due to her physically being different. Kinda fucked up, but I like that. But her empathy never really went much past that. She could feel sorry for her, but that never resulted in being able to take action. Despite recognizing Neo's distress, all she could do was empathize with the fact that Neo was feeling bad. Or Trivia, since they don't approve of Neo. But in reality, she was actually the one behind the scenes, wanting her daughter to be involved in the crime family, while her father wanted Neo to stay out of it, which is why he was always yelling at her. He was trying his best to keep Neo out of everything, but her mother was doing her best to involve Neo, or get her involved in her methods, which failed. But Neo never learns that. So the fate of locking her father inside of the room with all of the explosive dust in it and leaving her unconscious mother on the couch, which they could have just grabbed, if she was feeling up to it. The fate of blowing both of them up inside of the house with Neo apathetic towards them. It's not bad because Neo's a villain, and thus she isn't obligated to feel sympathy for characters who would likely otherwise deserve it. I guess if anything, I was just really disappointed that right at the end, RWBY pulled its classic, these characters are maybe becoming a little too sympathetic, time to make them go crazy. It definitely did that shtick with the dad. I can't say killing them was the wrong decision because Neo and Roman are villains, and they could do that. I guess similarly to Neo, I just felt apathetic to how the book treated them. But hey, everyone else is gonna say they were shit. Yay, Neo, she's cool. So what are my final thoughts? Was this book worth it? Should you get it? While Roman's Holiday certainly lacks developing a meaningful relationship between Roman and Neo, it's still interesting seeing both of their origin stories, and I think that in and of itself makes the book worth reading. Or if you just want to see Neo and Roman fuck shit up. It's not the strongest book E.C. Myers has written, but it's also by no means a bad entry into the franchise. In fact, I would still stand by the statement that these books are the best canonical material you can get from the brand of RWBY today. They just do a lot of what the show fails to do. I still support the fact that he's allowed to just branch off and tell these other side stories. The show clearly just has way too much content, and the way that it's written and formatted, it just isn't built to deliver backstories and just stuff like this and take time away from Team RWBY, I guess. So yeah, we kind of are just reliant on supplemental material to give us other information. So yeah, I'd pick this up even to show just that we want more stories about other characters. Plus, the book's shortcomings are way more forgivable than the show's due to just how much the book is able to accomplish. It establishes its characters and world building in a much more clear and concise direction. So those were my thoughts on Roman's Holiday. Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.